Hey all, I'm Matt, the host of Big Forest's Trail Map podcast. On Trail Map, we explore the winding, unconventional paths that people take to build meaningful lives and work. Each episode, I sit down with someone who's forging their own way, entrepreneurs, chefs, scientists, athletes, and more, to hear about the decisions that shaped them, the challenges they faced, and the unexpected turns along the trail. You'll hear stories of grit, reinvention, and resilience, plus some fun, surprising, and downright amazing moments they picked up along the way. Whether you're charting your own course or just love a good story, I hope you'll join me on the journey. In this episode, I'm joined by John Carter, a strength coach, gym owner of Titanium Health and Fitness in Brookline Village, Mass., author and speaker who spent his career helping people build not just stronger bodies, but stronger lives. John's faced unbelievable adversity on his own path. His story is raw, real, and full of insights about what it means to lead yourself through challenge and change. Hey everybody, this is Matt Gregory. I'm here with John Carter, who's an entrepreneur and author of a new book. He's the author of Triggered to Change, and I'm going to share the cover here so everybody can take a look. Triggered to Change, A Life Full of Turbulence by John Carter. So John, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, my friend. Pleasure to be here, Matthew.
For listeners who might not know your story yet, what would you say Triggered to Change is really about? And what made you decide it was time to tell it?
My book, Triggered to Change, is definitely an inspiring, motivating book. Back in 1992, I was shot in the head. And to tell you the truth, Matthew, that was the easy part of my story. As my life spiraled out of control with addictions of drugs, gambling, food, and even a prison stay. So my book, what inspired me to write my book, or to motivate me to write the book, I should say, was I did a TED Talk. And doing that TED Talk was my first time really telling my story to other people without being embarrassed or ashamed or whatnot. And the response I got from that TED Talk, Matthew, told me that I need to tell my story in a different way. So that's what inspired me to write this book.
Wow. So, and now where are you today, John? What does your life look like today?
Well, today my life is awesome. Even though I do have some difficulties, I truly enjoy my life. I'm a single dad. I have a 20-year-old son. I own my own business now. I'm a personal trainer. I've had Titanium Health and Fitness for 13 years now, and my life is awesome. I just wrote this book, so now I'm trying to market my book, and knowing that was my weakness, I was always taught by my dad to know your weaknesses. And my weakness is definitely being organized, marketing, all that stuff. So I hired an intern, a PR assistant, who is totally awesome, and he's doing a great job.
That's awesome. So you're getting your story out there. So you mentioned that you were shot in the head. Can you tell us a little bit more about what led to that and your experience in the early part of your life?
Well, Matthew, I had a very unique upbringing. My dad was in the mafia, and it was definitely a unique upbringing of love. My family was full of love, but there was also that aspect that wasn't brought around my family too much, but we knew about it. That was the early part of my life. And then I really, really was close to my dad. And after he passed away, I wanted to fulfill wear his shoes, so to speak. But my dad was a different size than I am, Matthew. And I was not cut out for this mafia stuff, gambling, and all this bull crap. So eventually I found myself in a world of trouble, and this man, instead of paying me a gambling debt, tried to assassinate me. Yeah.
Wow. So from that moment, to now where you're a business owner. You've got your own book. That's quite a journey. And you must be an incredibly resilient and strong person to have gotten from that moment to now. Can you take us back to a moment in your life when you felt like things had to change? And what was happening and what did that shift look like for you internally?
Well, Matthew, I never wanted things to change when I was growing up. I loved my life. I loved the way it was. I loved being a little thug, so to speak. What need when I really realized I need to change was after I got shot and I was in my wheelchair and I was now 330 pounds in a wheelchair, addicted to cocaine. And Matthew, it was horrible. What a horrible life. I was just so sick and tired of it. I wanted it to change, but I didn't know how. And what really made me change, Matthew, I was sitting in my apartment one day, and all of a sudden, boom, the door comes crashing in, and 9 police officers came barreling through my door, and they arrested me, Matthew. And that's what led to my change, was being arrested.
I can imagine that sounds like a really big moment in your life. And when you started to make changes, so obviously like these police officers coming into your home kind of prompted this, but like what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced from the outside world or from within yourself as you were starting to try to have to make these changes to your life?
Well, first of all, Matthew, my mentality, that was an obstacle. When I was bailed out of prison, bailed out of jail, I remember sitting in the parking lot of the jail, and Matthew, I had nowhere to go. I had no more money. I had no drugs. I was lost. And I was with a family member, and he suggested to me, you need to go to a detox. And I didn't even know what a detox was. But Matthew, at that time, I really didn't have any options. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to argue with him, so I did what he said. And he drove me there, and he dropped me off, and that's what started my recovery.
So, and actually that leads into my next question. So what role has community played in your life? Places like you talk about Granada House or AA, and what role do those places play in your recovery?
Well,
And
Matthew,
yeah, go for it.
okay, the Granada House is what saved my life. When I was in detox, I was interviewed for a halfway house, and it was the Granada House. And once my interview, I rolled in. I was sitting in my wheelchair in the office, and then comes this woman. She comes walking in, limping heavily, and I'm looking at her, and she proceeded. She was the executive director of the halfway house, and she proceeded to tell me her story, how she was once addicted to cocaine and went through all this head trauma and was in a wheelchair for years. And I'm looking at her, and I couldn't believe she got out of that wheelchair. Matthew, the wheelchair was a prison. The wheelchair was awful. I was in awe. I was looking at her. I could not believe she just told me she was in the same place I was, and now she's walking around. I was I was in shock. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And was from that day I listened. She was like my God. Matthew, I listened to every single word she said.
What was that
And
woman's name?
her name was Deborah Lawson. She wrote the foreword in my book.
So, and she's still with us, right, Deb?
Yes, she is. Yes,
So we
she
got to give a
retired
shout out
for.
to Deb here. She played an important role in your recovery and in your life.
I had so many people's recovery in life, not just mine.
Yeah.
I mean,
One
she
thing
is.
one thing that strikes me and just in full transparency for our listening audience, I'm currently a client of John's at his gym at Titanium Health and Fitness. And I know that John plays an important role, has played an important role in my life, in my wife's life. but in a lot of people's lives, just in building resilience and recovery from different things. I'm just wondering, John, as this interview hopefully gets out and more people hear it, what words of encouragement would you share with somebody who's going through a hard time right now and who might need a little bit of a boost?
Don't quit. Don't give up. Keep fighting. And you're not alone, Matthew. I felt so alone, and I was not alone. I just needed to listen and to ask for help. And there are so many people out there willing to help. It's unbelievable. The support I get is my clients are my support system. I told you about my TED Talk. The way I got into that TED Talk, Matthew, was I had a client and I was not open with my story at that time. I didn't tell people my story. You know, I'm a business owner. I wasn't going to have a new client come in and say, shot in the head. I was in the mob. I was in prison. Oh, join my gym. They'd run out the door. So I came up, I didn't want to lie. So I came up with the story that I was in a hunting accident and I was shot in the head. It really wasn't a lie because I was shot in the head. I just didn't tell them that I was the one being hunted, Matthew. So after a while, I would every time I see, you see somebody 3 times a week, you start getting real close to them. And I was divulging a little information about myself each and every time. And finally, she said, I thought you were just in an accident. She said, I didn't realize this. Oh my God, she said. She said, you have to do a TED Talk. And I was obliviated to her, so I didn't know what was going on. But she had the connections. And I remember going to my first TED Talk interview, and I was like, what the hell did she get me involved with here? I said, there was no way I could do this. But she said, trust me. She said, we're not alone. We're going to get you help. And by the way, I said, I'm not alone. I have help here. And she got me a coach, just like a coach. And they came up and coached me twice a week for months. Matthew, the feeling of that TED Talk, I got a standing ovation. The feeling of that, I felt like I was back in and on the football field playing the Super Bowl. It was incredible. I felt that adrenaline rush, and I said, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep talking. I want to write this book, and I want to inspire people. I love inspiring people, Matthew.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know there are a lot of people that have been inspired by you. And I think that this book will just serve as a greater platform for you to be an source of inspiration to people. And I think just shout out to Deb and to who was the client that led you to the TED Talk? What was her name?
Her name is Taryn Ash.
Okay. Shout out to Taryn as well. And
Yes.
can you talk a little bit, John, about AA as well and the role that AA played in your recovery?
AA was unbelievable in my recovery. And I told you about Deb and how I worshipped every word she said. I didn't take any shortcuts. When she said something, I did to the full tilt because I wanted what she had. She was smiling, happy. I have a wheelchair. I mean, my goodness, I wanted that. And she said, at the start, I was going to 3 meetings a day because AA at that time was my life. Now AA gave me a life, so obviously I can't do 3 meetings anymore because AA gave me a life to live. If it wasn't for AA, I wouldn't be in this life. So I listened to her. I was going to 3 meetings a day and involved in the groups and always with people. Matthew, never feeling alone. I loved it.
That's great. That's great. So let's switch gears a little bit here to talk about fitness. And I know, can you just tell us a little bit about how fitness became a big part of your journey and then how your work on your body impacted how you saw yourself?
Sure. Personal training started for me in prison, Matthew. I was in prison around three. I had lost a little weight. I was around 300 pounds in a wheelchair. And at that time, my first day in prison, three guys had entered my cell. And Matthew, I was scared to death. I thought I was in big trouble. And they said, "We're here to help you." Matthew, every single chance we had, they got me to that gym. Unbelievable. Couldn't realize what was happening to my body. I just listened to them. I wasn't alone no more. They took me there. They trained me. They trained me out. Matthew, I was getting stronger and stronger using that wheelchair less and less. It was unbelievable. And in prison, you have a lot of time to think. And I was not alone anymore. But in my mind, when I was talking to myself, I knew I wasn't alone. And everything was going to be okay because working out really, really, really helps the mind mentally. I didn't know what was happening at that time, but I was getting better and better and clearer and thinking better. And so, so now when I got out of prison, I knew I wanted to continue training, continue in the fitness world. I kept applying and applying for jobs at the local gyms, and I was getting refused and refused and refused all the time. And then I went to Boston Sport Club to train, and I was training, and I seen the manager there. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go up and talk to him. He was a big man, but I said, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. And I had my gym clothes on now because I was in there working out. I wasn't going into an interview, so I am in shape. My gait, my walking gingerly wasn't too attractive now. They seen my body was in good shape. So I talked to the manager said, well, I have 10 minutes for a little talk while we go into my office. Well, that 10 minutes turned into an hour and a half interview. Matthew, and I told him my everything. And he was so accepting of me. He said, fill this application out. And I was filling it out, and he was talking the question about jail and my core. And I said, oh, shit. I haven't told him. How about my mother? I said, you know what, Matthew? I said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to be truthful, and I'm going to go for it. And I sat down with him, and he looked at me. I told my story. He said, can you start tomorrow? And I couldn't believe it. I said, what? He said, thank you for being honest with me. Can you start tomorrow? I said, well, aren't the superiors got a question? He said, well, this application isn't going any further than this room. Don't you worry about it. You were honest. You were honest with me, was telling my. He said, I only wish my mom was here to talk to you. He said, she had passed. His mom had passed away of alcoholism a year prior. He said, I wish she was here to talk to you because you might have sparked a little something in her to get better. Yeah. So now with this story, so now I go home and I'm excited. I'm starting. He calls me up. He says, my morning man just called in sick. I'm an hour away. He said, can you go to the gym and open up? I said, but I have no idea. What am I going to? He told me the combination, and I'm thinking to myself, he just trusted me to go into his gym with the combination. I'm an ex-convict. Couldn't believe he was trusting me like that. I go in, and this gentleman comes in. He was about 50 years old, overweight, and he was looking for the person I was filling in for because he had an appointment with him. And I said, well, I can help you. I'll help you. I sat down with him, and I was going over, his health issues and all this because I just met him. I wanted to talk to him before we do anything. He's telling me how he has diabetes. This is, I was like overwhelmed. I'm sitting there trying to smile at you all, man. Matthew, I was scared to death. I couldn't believe it. So I said, okay, we'll go have a little light workout. I took her on the floor, give a little light workout. Now we go back into the office, and this is where it's time for me to sell them on a package. It's my job now to sell them on a package. So I hand him my menu, and he's looking at it. He says, "Oh, I'll take one of these 40-pack." Matthew, was $5,000. Matthew, I I couldn't believe what was going on. 6:30 in the morning, my first day. No,
Probably better
I
than a
see
cup
the
of
manager
coffee.
walk in. So I say to him, "Can you excuse me for a second? I just gotta see my manager, Matthew." I ran to my manager as fast as I could get to him, and I told him what's going on. And he said, "Stop bullshit me," he said. I said, "David, seriously?" He's in the office right now. And he said, "Follow me." Matthew, he went in there, and I didn't say anything. I was just learning. He was like a magician the way he closed his sale. Unbelievable. It was so that guy was my first client, and he's still my client today. I trained him, his wife, his son, and his daughter, and I met them. Yeah.
That's so great.
So my manager says to me, he says, we just rolled that 50 package out last week. He said, "You're the first one in Boston to sell one."
That's
What
great.
a way to start your day, huh?
So cool. So cool. And so this was Boston Sports Club. That was your first experience. And now I know today you own Titanium Gym, which is a private gym in Brookline. So how does Titanium Gym fit into this story?
I was still at Boston Sport Club. I was there. It was like my third year there, and my manager was leaving, and he was going to open up his own gym. It was called Jonas Health. And about a month after that, I get the phone call asking me to come join him. Boston Sports Club was a big major gym, and now I'm going to a private little gym on my own, and I was petrified. I had a son, I had my obligations, and now I'm going to open my own place, going to work for him. And I have to get my own clients, do everything on my own. Thank goodness I did it because I came here and it was great. Now, after a while, working with his name Eric Jonas, decided he wanted to change the gym and have more clients and more people. And I had already had a clientele that liked the privacy. And I love the privacy aspect of it. Love it. And so I had to make a choice: is either leave or buy them out. And I bought them out. And it was the hot Matthew. I think I had $18 left to my name after buying them out. If I didn't train, I didn't eat. My son, at the time was 6. He moved in with my sister down in Alabama while I got my gym going. And my home was the gym because I could not afford 2 rents. So I lived in my office in the gym, and I got my gym going.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think John, as you're going through this story, you obviously had a lot of interactions with people who were supportive of you along the way, who helped you along the way. But I also, I think part of resilience is the way that with each of those interactions, you stepped up and you tried to make the most of it. And I think that that's like for everybody who's listening to this conversation, like I think that's a big part of the takeaway is there are opportunities out there, but it's also on you to like follow through with them.
Well said, Matthew.
So I'd like to switch gears a little bit to the process of writing this book, Triggered to Change. And I know writing a memoir can bring up a lot. What was it like to go back and relive parts of your story in order to write this book?
Matthew, Going back, it brought a lot of tears and a lot of joy, but Matthew was a great, great experience. I wrote my book. I had the draft done in the first weekend. I couldn't put the pen down, Matthew. I wrote 18 hours a day for 3 to 4 days straight, and it was completed. The book wasn't completed, but the draft was. If you read the draft, you would have no idea what it meant. But I read the draft and it made perfect sense. Because at 2 in the morning, if I woke up with an idea, I would get up and I would write it down in my draft. And it made totally great sense to me.
You got your story out and put it down on paper. And I'm sure there was a lot of emotion and, different feelings that came up for you as you were going through it. What do you hope for somebody that doesn't know you, that picks the book up? What do you hope that they take away from reading your book?
I want them to know they're not alone. First of all, not alone. No matter what your problem is, you're not alone. You might think you're alone, but you're not. Don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. And what I want someone to take out of this book is, geez, if someone like that can do it, because this is exactly what I thought about Deb. When I seen Deb, I said, if she can do this, so can I. I might have been down the dumps and down, but I knew I could do it. And that's what I want people to take from this book, to know they're not alone and they can do it. He did it. She did it. I can do it.
But also, given everything that you've been through in your life, there have got to have been moments where you're like, I don't know if I can do it, and where you like felt like you were going to give up, and maybe some darker moments. And what helped you keep going in those moments?
Well, Matthew, quitting was always taught to me by my dad. That's a no-no. He never let me quit. I remember one time I was on my swim team, and I was like 12 years old. And I was on my swim team for 6 years now. And it was very grueling. You have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, get in the pool. And I was now a teenager. I was be a thug. Not, I didn't want to be a swimmer no more. And I wanted to leave. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to quit swimming. He said, oh my goodness, what's wrong? He thought I had an injury. And when I told him no, I just want to quit because I'm tired of it. That's when he said, that's BS. That's not happening here. If you had an injury, that's one thing. But you're not going to quit something because you don't feel like it. They're depending on you. You joined them. You gave them. You're not going to quit on them. No. They're going to finish. If you don't want to do it next year, then just don't stop. Go on to something else. But you don't start something and then quit. So that was my dad always telling me not to quit. The experience I had was wanting to quit. I don't know if a dream would count, but in my dream, I had a dream. When I was shot in the head, I entered a coma. And I was in a coma for 90 days. And to me, coma was one long big dream. It might have been a short dream, I have no idea. And it felt, and it's very vivid to me, Matthew. It wasn't like a dream where it's kind of foggy. It's like a real, like I lived it. And the moral of the dream was, we were in a hospital, and I had no idea why. And we got into the pool. They put us in a pool every day, and we swam. And the winner of the race got to go home. And it hurt so bad to get in that pool, Matthew. Again, this is a dream. It hurt so bad to get in that pool. And I said, that's it. I quit. I told everybody, I'm done. I'm not getting out of this bed again. And this old man, who I had no idea who it was, sat down in the bed. You're not going to quit. You're not a quitter. And I'm going to coach you and I'm going to help you. You're not alone. And I said to myself, geez, I'm not alone. And I listened to this man, and he even though it hurt like hell,
Yeah.
he got me out of bed every day, brought me out to the pool, and he coached me, and he coached me, and he trained me, and he trained me. Now it was the morning of the big race. And he's at my bed, he's getting me out, give me a talk, get me out, fired up, all ready to go, got me in the pool. After I was swimming like a bat out of hell, and I could see him coaching me on. I hit the wall, and I woke. I woke up out of a coma. Thank God I didn't quit, Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation is just like how much you've just kept going and not quit. And I guess if someone right now is listening to us and they're feeling really lost, like maybe they're dealing with addiction or in a dark place, it sounds like you're saying don't quit.
Don't quit. You know, Matthew, I remember being in the halfway house, and we're in a circle, and there was like 30 some odd people. And Deb was in the middle, and she said, everybody here that wants to stay sober, raise your hand. Everybody in the room raised their hand. And she said, the truth of the matter is the facts. None of you are going to stay sober. Because the odds, at that time, I don't know what they are now, was like 1 in 33. So out of the 33 of us in the room, one was going to stay sober. And, Matthew. Now I still go to the Granite House, and we look at old pictures from the day I was at. Dead, jail, dead. Matthew, I was the only one to stay sober in the house. Unbelievable.
Oh, it's too easy to relapse and to go back down that road.
Yeah, we're talking about relapse, Matthew. Now relapse, that's where AA saved me, because with AA, I found by telling your story and talking, you
Yeah.
never forget.
Yeah.
You never forget how bad it was back on that day of detox when you had to enter detox. You never forget how bad it was. Now, if you stop talking about it, you stop going to meetings. No, it wasn't that bad. That day wasn't that bad. I could do that again,
Uh-huh.
no problem.
Yeah.
You know, I see guys 10, 15 years sober, like, forget about where they came from, and now guess what? They're right back at the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and sobriety, Matthew, our problem is this big. One drink away, one shot away, and our problems start all over again.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, and I think that even just like writing this book and doing this podcast and getting out, you're telling your story over and over. You're telling your story to yourself. You're telling your story to anybody to listen. And I hear you about, the importance of keeping it top of mind for yourself. Um, so what does a good day look like for you now compared to what it looked like for you, 10 years ago?
Seeing my son smile, that's a great day. My son is awesome, by the way. I am so fortunate. My son is totally awesome. But to see him smile and see him be happy and succeed in life, that's very happy for me, Matthew. That's what it's all about.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, and I know we're coming up on time here, but I know that dogs also play a really important role in your life, and Great Danes specifically. Can you tell us a little bit about the Service Dog Project and its relation to this book, and maybe about your dogs?
Sure. Dog project. My dog, by the way, I have two Great Danes, Turbulence and Jagger. Jagger was my first Great Dane service dog. Service Dog Project, they raise and train Great Danes for the mobility impaired, with veterans and first responders having top priority, and then the general public. They changed lives, Matthew. I'm gonna tell you a little story about them. It's a volunteer farm. So when you're waiting for your dog, most recipients are volunteering. They're up at the farm. So I was up there, and I met this one kid. His name was Matthew too. I think he was 12. He had multiple sclerosis, and would walk around with the canes. And so he was in the kennels, patting and watching the dogs, and I went in there with him, and he said, "These judges, do you think they're going to give me one of these dogs?" And I said, "Matthew, it's not a question of if, it's when. Yeah, you're getting one." Matthew, he got a dog the next week, and his parents I still talk to his parents. They rant and rave how they changed this kid's life. The kids aren't the most gracious people in the world. They can be a little mean to you sometimes. I remember being back at school, and Matthew, he's walking around with a 200-pound Great Dane down the corridors of the school. Everybody wants to be his friend. Everybody. His parents say only the people in the school. He said everybody in our town knows who he is.
Yeah.
Matthew, the parents told me they didn't see him smile for years. Now it's a constant smile. His head's up. His constant. They changed the kid's life.
That's great. That's great. And
So
I know
that's why the Service Dog Project is being helped by the proceeds of this book. And actually, they're in the process of moving the farms. They're moving to Alfred, Maine, and it's quite an expensive transition, but we're going to make it through, and hopefully, it's going to help.
so a portion of the proceeds from the book are going directly to the Service Dog Project.
Correct.
And might be able to help them with their move up to Maine.
Correct.
That's very cool. So just as we're wrapping up here, where can people find your book and follow your journey?
My book is on Amazon.
Okay.
My author website is turbulencebook.com. That's my author website, and on Amazon.
Awesome. Are there ways for people to connect with you directly if they're interested in maybe hearing more about your story or asking you questions?
Oh, of course. All my information is right on my website.
Okay.
Contact me. I'd be more than happy to help and assist.
Awesome.
Trust
And then,
me, I love helping, Matt. Though I don't want to sound cheesy, but I really do. That's why I have a private gym. I mean, I could have a trainer and more people in. I love the aspect of being solo, where my clients can not only have a great workout, but they can trust me and tell me their stories, and I can share my story, and we can bounce reflections off each other. They help me, and I help them. It's a great situation.
awesome. And I guess while we're on the subject of your gym, are you accepting new clients at your gym as well?
Oh yes, of course, yes.
Okay. Cool. So that information is on your website as well. And again, as a client, I can highly recommend John's personal training, and it's worth trying a session at least. And then as we finish up, one final question: are there any events that are upcoming around the book, or anything that you'd like to mention?
Yes, I do have a book signing coming up on June 11th. It's a Wednesday night at Hummingbird Bookstore. It's in Chester Hill, Mass. And
What's
that's
the
my
time
next
of that?
event.
What's the time of that event?
The time is 7 to 8:30.
7 to 8:30 p.m. And I also heard a rumor that your the turbulence was going to be there. Is that true?
Oh, turbulence! I don't go anywhere without turbulence, Matt.
Okay, so you
He's
get to meet
my
the Great
right-hand
Dane as
dog.
well. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, John, it's been a complete pleasure to talk to you today. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap things up here?
I want to share, don't quit, Matthew. Don't give up. I know I want to promote my book and things like that. Matthew, just don't quit. Don't give up. Life is okay. You're not alone.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you, John. And yeah, I hope you have a great one.
Thank you, Matthew. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure.